Okay, you're the transfer, huh? You sure picked a day. Things a bit hectic downstairs this morning.
There has been a containment breach.
There have been a lot of survival crafting games over the last few years, some of them good, some bad. Most of them are open world and even more of them unfinished. And whilst Abiotic Factor is still unfinished, it's currently in early access, it definitely isn't one of those, not another one. No, it's actually a pretty good and very unique game. So what is Abiotic Factor exactly? Well, you take an already decent survival crafting game, for example Valheim or Sons of the Forest, you drop that into an iconic Half-Life inspired setting, sprinkle some quirky humor on top, and there you go, you've got Abiotic Factor. Now, what really stands out for me is that, just like Sons of the Forest, Abiotic Factor has an actual story. And unlike most other survival crafting games, that means you aren't dropped into some procedurally generated open world and left to your own devices. You start your first day at work as a new employee, you work your way through new areas, and you learn more about what actually caused the containment breach. This motivates you as a player to go out and explore, and it gives you goals to work towards and unlock new stuff. It makes progression so much more meaningful.
So, ready for your first day?
Abiotic Factor centers on survival in a massive subterranean research facility by the fictional organization Gate. You play as a scientist on your first day at work, trapped in a facility after a catastrophic containment breach, unleashes chaos, including supernatural entities, transdimensional invaders, and rogue militant groups. Sounds kind of familiar, actually. Now, the game really doesn't try to hide that it's inspired by the original Half-Life. The creatures are pretty familiar. You have the carbuncle that looks and behaves a lot like a barnacle from Half-Life. The Xers are very reminiscent of the Vortigaunt. The military units are also very similar, and so on. A lot of the locations are very much inspired by Half-Life as well, but I can clearly see some influence from Backrooms and SBC. Now, where the games clearly differ is in tone and approach. Abiotic Factor is far more lighthearted and is, at its core, a survival crafting game.
Hey, new transfer. I got pulled in from surface duty. The usual lady, she got called out to help downstairs. Happens. Chaos is kind of our thing around here.
Starting off, Abiotic Factor offers a straightforward character creation process. You can pick from a variety of 90s office-themed presets like hairstyles, ties, glasses, and so on. All fit the game's quirky aesthetic pretty well. It's nothing revolutionary, but it gets the job done for a game of this caliber, and it does add a touch of personality. The game's introduction doubles as a tutorial, setting the tone for its lighthearted yet chaotic vibe. It's well designed, and it introduces the player to both the setting and some of the basic controls. It's perfect for newcomers, and it covers essentials like jumping, crouching, crafting, without feeling tedious for experienced players. The skills mechanics add some depth to the game. It's pretty basic. They let you pick a class with specific traits and quirks that shape some of the early gameplay, mostly because you have the opportunity to level up all of those skills. As far as I know, nothing is locked behind certain types of classes. Overall, the skills are pretty basic. You have fitness skills like sprinting that increase your stamina, combat skills like reloading that increase your reload speed, and survival skills like cooking that give you access to some unique recipes and so on. The system is functional. Some skills do feel like a bit of a grind to level up. You do run out of stamina pretty early in the early game, and it just requires you to run around a lot, but it's fine. Crafting is one of the places where Abiotic Factor stands out. It's one of the mechanics where the game shines compared to some of its rivals. Instead of the usual wood and stone formula, The game encourages creative crafting using office supplies like duct tape, pens. You combine them with some alien guts and pieces to make tools and weapons. It's pretty unique. Each item has heaps of personality and suit the setting pretty well. The balance of available materials also keeps the system quite challenging and engaging, because there are moments that you might run out and you have to go out and explore to find new materials. My biggest gripe with the crafting system is the unlocking of new recipes. When you find a new material, it might unlock an ID. However, to turn this ID into an actual recipe, you have to play a minigame, and this guessing game becomes a little tedious after a while because the amount of recipes is enormous. The mechanic feels unnecessary and repetitive. It's cool in concept, but doesn't really add any value. There isn't a bonus if you do it right the first time, or a penalty for making any mistakes. You just keep guessing till you get it right. Fortunately, this feature can be disabled when you start a new game in the settings. The map design shines with its interconnected shortcuts, secret passages, and puzzles that encourage thoughtful exploration. The story-driven progression integrates seamlessly with these mechanics, creating a sense of purpose and pacing. This way, it never feels like you're somewhere you aren't supposed to be yet, although some parts are rough to get through and not fully prepared. This makes the experience balanced yet rewarding. Combat is straightforward but enjoyable, there's decent feedback on attacks and blocking. Guns and ammo can be scarce though, and it does create another challenge to overcome. Overall combat is fine, but nothing revolutionary. The survival elements are standard for the genre. You've got your typical thirst, hunger, and energy, but Abiotic Factor spices things up with a humorous twist. For example, when you relieve yourself, there's a hilarious minigame that allows you to speed up the process. The hunger and thirst mechanic do mean you'll have to scavenge and hunt or farm yourself. They've added a fishing game in the latest update. When you sleep, you get to play the dinosaur game. If you don't know what that means, you've never had the misfortune of having no internet connection, probably. Besides sleeping every night, the power goes out in the whole facility, which adds a few unique challenges to the game. The game supports both single-player and multiplayer modes, though it clearly shines in co-op. Playing with friends amplifies the fun, with opportunities for teamwork and some hilarious moments. The design feels heavily geared towards a cooperative experience, and I definitely recommend playing it with friends. It's still enjoyable on your own, but the devs clearly intended it to be a multiplayer experience.
Oh, you're new.
Now, when it comes down to the style and design of Abiotic Factor, I am going to compare it again to Half-Life. Yes, I know, I've been doing it a lot, but it really does draw a lot of inspiration from Half-Life, and I more specifically want to compare it to Black Mesa, which is the latest remaster, I guess you would call it, of the original Half-Life. The games do really differ. Half-Life Black Mesa has a more semi-realistic aesthetic. It stays true to the 1998 classic. The textures are a little bit more detailed, the lighting is a little bit more detailed, and it's just overall a lot more gritty. The game is, in the end, also a little bit more serious. Abiotic Factor is far more quirky, far more comic-y, a lot more vibrant colors, exaggerated designs, and it really focuses on the more quirky and humorous aspect. The sound design more or less follows the same trend. It's more quirky, it's more cartoonish, playful, has a bit of a lighter tone and a humorous approach to it, very much inspired by retro tones from 90s-ish games. The soundtrack is pretty much upbeat and adventurous, gets a little darker and tense at times, but it just tries to keep the experience engaging without becoming very intense or dark. The tone of the game is thus unmistakably meant to be fun and not overly serious. The performance of Abiotic Factor is generally stable. It kind of depends on specific areas, and you might notice occasional frame drops and stuttering. The game is optimized well enough for most configurations, and I can appreciate the details don't tax the system excessively. I did notice initially on launch a few months ago that the loading times were a little longer when you switched between areas, but this appears to have been fixed. Overall, the game performs pretty much what you'd expect for an early access game. There are occasional frame drops, maybe some stuttering, some light glitches and bugs, but nothing excessive. The development team appears to be pretty responsive to feedback and they're continuously updating the game, so I'm certain they're going to keep improving the performance as the game gets closer to its full release. The developers seem committed to supporting the game post-launch. They've already added features like fishing, and the updates so far have been solid. It feels like they're listening to the community, so I'm pretty optimistic about future patches and maybe even DLC. The main story offers a solid 15 to 25, maybe 30 hours of playtime, depending on how much you explore or focus on activities. If you dive into multiplayer or sandbox, you can easily stretch that much further. It doesn't feel short, and the pacing keeps things pretty interesting. Now, Abiotic Factor really stands out because of its charm, and it's pretty original in the sea of survival games out there. The Half-Life vibes are unmistakable, but it's definitely not trying to be a copy at all. It's doing its own thing. The mix of humor, the mechanics, the narrative-driven progression are quite refreshing. There are a few rough spots, but the game's creativity makes up for it. If you're into games like Valheim or Sons of the Forest, or maybe you just love that nostalgic Half-Life vibe, you should absolutely give this one a go. It's especially a lot of fun in co-op, but it's fine in single player too, it really is. Overall, I'd give this game an 8 out of 10. For an early access game, it feels pretty polished, and it's definitely already worth your time. It's fun, unique, packed with personality, and I really can't wait to see where the developers take it next. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you enjoyed this review or found it helpful, please don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing for some more reviews. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Abiotic Factor. Please let me know in the comments below.
Sorted? Okay. Bit of a kerfuffle downstairs this morning. You probably want to get a move on.